Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at Flutter 3.29. And, this release is really making a splash. I mean, especially for folks who are, trying to get those Android and iOS apps to feel like really, truly native. Plus, they've done a lot of work to make things run smoother and just faster overall.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're really zeroing in on that whole native feel. It's not just like, copying what it looks like, but like actually going deeper into how each platform is designed and how people use them.
Right, okay, so let's break it down a bit. First off, we've got Impeller. This is Flutter's new rendering engine. And it's kind of the star of this show here. I mean, you know how sometimes apps can feel a little bit laggy, especially like on older devices? Have you noticed that?
Oh, for sure. For sure. So they gave Flutter this like shot of espresso. I mean, with Impeller, they're really hitting that, silky smooth 60 frames per second performance, but on most Android phones now at least. And that makes all the animations and the scrolling and just everything feel so much more responsive.
Totally. And here's where things get even more interesting. They're actually moving away from Skia on iOS. So Impeller is becoming the main engine on both platforms.
Yeah, this is a big move, and it could mean like not just better performance, but also, apps that are smaller and more efficient because Impeller is built to be lighter and faster, especially on iOS. So it really fits with that whole idea of Flutter apps feeling like they belong, on each platform.
Absolutely. And it's not just about speed either. Impeller is opening up all these cool new possibilities for visual effects. They're talking about things like more efficient backdrop filters and custom shaders, and that stuff lets developers really add that extra bit of polish to their apps.
It's true. It's like giving designers this whole new set of tools to play with. They can create some really unique and visually stunning experiences now.
Now let's talk Cupertino for a minute. This is how Flutter makes apps that feel right at home on iOS.
And they've really been paying attention to the details here. Like they've really refined all those Cupertino components just to make them feel more native. For example, they've added a new option for navigation bars. So now you can put things like search fields right in there or those segmented controls you see in a lot of iOS
Right.
apps.
It's all about blending in seamlessly. So like imagine you're building an e-commerce app and you want to put a search bar right in the navigation bar, just like you see in those native iOS shopping apps. Now it's super easy to do that.
And even little things like the blur effects in those Cupertino pop-ups, they've made them more vibrant. It's a small change, but it makes a big difference.
Oh, and I noticed they've improved the Cupertino alert dialog too. In dark mode, it looks way closer to the native iOS style now.
Oh, yeah, and there's also this new thing, Cupertino sheet route. It makes creating those, draggable modal sheets, that's a classic iOS thing. It makes it so much easier to do that now.
It's true. Okay, well, let's switch gears for a second and talk about material design, which is, really the core of how Android apps are designed.
And material design is always changing, right? Well, Flutter 3.29 brings some updates to keep everything up to date with the latest Android trends.
Yeah, they've added this new M3 page transition builder. It's called Fade Forwards Page Transitions Builder. And it's designed to match the latest transition style on Android, where the new page kind of glides in from the right as it fades in. It's subtle, but it looks really nice.
And the cool thing is, it's actually faster than the old way of doing transitions. So you get a smoother experience and it looks more modern.
Right. They've also updated the styling for those progress indicators and sliders to match the latest Material 3 specs.
It's all about making sure developers have the tools they need to build apps that really feel at home on Android devices, like they're speaking the design language fluently.
Exactly. And the great thing is developers can switch between different styles really easily. So if they want to keep things consistent with their older apps, they can. Or they can go all in on the latest look.
That flexibility is one of the best things about Flutter. You're not stuck with one way of doing things. You can adapt and evolve as designs change.
Now let's talk about something Flutter has always been great at, accessibility. They've made some really thoughtful improvements in this release.
They're really focused on making sure everyone can have a great experience using Flutter apps, no matter what their abilities are. Like, for example, the form widget. Now, it only announces the first error when someone's using a screen reader. It seems like a small thing, but it makes a big difference for people who rely on those screen readers.
Right. It just creates a smoother experience. And for developers who are working with text, They've got some new tools to play with as well.
Yeah, the new selection listener and the selection listener notifier, they give developers much more control over how text selection works. So it's easier to create those rich interactive text experiences. You can really fine-tune how text behaves in your app. It opens up a lot of possibilities.
I can see that. So all in all, it looks like this is a pretty significant release for Flutter developers. It's not just about, flashy new features, but really about refining that core experience and making everything work better and faster and more intuitively.
It really does feel like they're laying the groundwork for the future, making sure the core of Flutter is, solid and efficient and adaptable, and that's going to open up even more possibilities down the road.
And speaking of the future, let's talk about the web for a bit. Flutter 3.29 has some pretty cool updates for web developers too.
Yeah, one thing that really stands out is how they've relaxed the requirements for WebAssembly support, which is huge for deploying Flutter web apps, especially for folks who aren't, super deep into the technical side of things.
Right, so before you had to make sure you had these specific HTTP response headers set up when you were hosting your Flutter web apps, if you were using WebAssembly, that is. But now they've loosened those restrictions, so deployment's a lot smoother.
Yeah, even if your app ends up running on just one thread because of those default headers, you still get the benefits of WebAssembly without having to jump through all those hoops. It's really about making Flutter more accessible.
I like that. And they've also addressed some of the challenges developers were having with images on the web. Remember how dealing with those coarse issues could be such a pain when you were trying to load images from external sources?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That was one of those things that could really slow you down. But in this release, they've really tackled that course issue head on. So developers have more control over how images are displayed, and it's just more reliable now.
It's like they've removed a major roadblock for web developers, especially anyone working with apps that have a lot of images.
And for those who are into the nitty-gritty details, they've also removed the web HTML renderer in this release.
Oh, what was the reason for that?
It was something they had planned, and it's part of their strategy to streamline the web platform and really focus on the most efficient rendering approaches. Kind of like fine-tuning the engine under the hood.
Makes sense. Okay, well, let's move on to something I know all the developers out there are going to love. DevTools. Flutter 3.29 has some really exciting updates for the developer tools, which should make debugging and development a whole lot easier.
The biggest thing here is the new DevTools inspector. It's the default for everyone now, and it's designed to make debugging super easy.
Yeah, I've been using it, and I love how much cleaner the interface is. The widget tree is so much easier to navigate now, and that new widget properties view gives you all the info you need right there.
And here's a cool trick. The inspector can actually update automatically now whenever you do a hot reload or you navigate somewhere in your app. So as you're making changes to your code and you see them in the app, the inspector keeps up. You get a real-time view of what's happening under the hood.
It's like having X-ray vision into your app. That's got to be a huge productivity boost.
They've also made some smart changes to how you select widgets on the device. It's much more efficient now. You don't have to keep clicking a button to select a different widget. You can just keep selecting widgets on the device until you're done.
It's those little things that can really make a difference. And speaking of making things easier, let's not forget about the improvements to the logging tool.
So think of it like this. You're a detective trying to solve a bug in your app, right? Well, the logging tool is like your magnifying glass. It gives you all these clues, like the severity level, the category, even the specific zone, and isolate where the problem happened. It's like having a detailed map of your app.
And to help you sort through all those clues, they've added support for filtering by log severity level.
Exactly. So if you're only looking for critical errors, you can filter out all the other stuff and focus on what's important. Plus, they've made the whole logging tool a lot faster and smoother.
It's like they took everything great about Flutter and made it even better. Performance, usability, developer experience. They really hit all the right notes with this release.
I think what's really impressive is how Flutter is bridging the gap between different platforms. With each release, it gets easier to create apps that feel truly native, whether they're running on Android, iOS, or the web.
It's like they've found the secret formula for cross-platform development.
And they're not keeping it a secret. They're sharing it with everyone so developers can build amazing things.
Yeah, it really feels like they're raising the bar for everyone doing cross-platform development. And they're doing it in a way that's ambitious, but also practical.
And it's not just about the tech itself either. I mean, they're also building this really strong community around Flutter, where developers can learn from each other and share ideas and contribute to making the platform better.
It's that combination of, cutting edge tech and a supportive community that makes Flutter so unique.
Totally. It's like they've created this perfect storm of innovation and collaboration and this like shared passion for building really beautiful and engaging apps.
It's true. Well, as we wrap up our look at Flutter 3.29, I'm curious to get your take on it. What are some of the key takeaways for you? What are you most excited about?
Well, for me, it's got to be the attention to detail. Whether it's like making those Cupertino components match iOS perfectly or streamlining the DevTools so debugging is a breeze. It just shows that they're focused on getting those little things right.
I agree completely. It's that level of polish that really makes Flutter apps stand out.
And I'm also really excited about the performance improvements. I mean, Impeller is a game changer. It's going to make Flutter apps so much smoother and more responsive.
Yeah, it's like they gave Flutter a turbo boost. And with all the improvements to the web platform, Flutter's becoming even more attractive for building web apps.
It's really becoming a one-stop shop for developers who want to build, beautiful, high-performance apps that can reach a wide audience.
That's a great point. So if you're a developer and you've been curious about Flutter, or maybe you've tried it out a little bit before, now's the perfect time to really dive in. Flutter 3.29 shows just how far it's come, and it gives us a glimpse of the amazing things to come.
It's like an invitation to join this whole community of developers who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with app development.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Flutter 3.29. We hope you found it informative and maybe even a bit inspiring.
Until next time, happy coding!